What's up guys, my name's Liam, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at two brand new keyboards that have been getting a lot of praise out there in the community. I had to get my hands on them. The first one is going to be the collab between ATK and QwertyKeys. It's the Hex80. The second one is going to be the QwertyKeys Neo65 Sonic HE Plus. So in this video I'm going to be breaking down how my experience has been with them so far, and hopefully by the end of this video I'll be able to help you decide whether or not any one of these could possibly be the perfect gaming keyboard for you. And I promise you, you're going to want to stick around for these. So let's check them out. So before we get started today, I did want to let you know that both of these were sent out to me. However, everything you'll be hearing in this video is going to be my own words and my own opinions. So starting out with the Neo65, included inside the box does come with this carrying case. They also do have a switch and keycap puller, USB-C to USB Type-A cable. I do believe this is some type of a tool to pull the internals out of the actual case itself. It also does come with this extra keycap and switch puller. I'll break that down for you here shortly. And then also 4 additional switches in case you need to swap them out. But here's a quick look of the carrying case. It does come included with. It does have this rubberized handle up here on the top. It does have a harder external shell here. On the inside, this is where the keyboard was stored. It does have these Velcro straps in here to hold it in. Has some additional pockets right here. And then I'll show you the top up here does have this zip up with this mesh storage container up here, which is where all of the things that come included were inside of. And then pretty much just the exact same thing on the Hex80. Does come with 4 additional switches, USB-C to USB Type-A cable, switch and keycap puller. And here's a look at that other tool that I didn't break down for you on the other one. To pull out the keycaps, you can flip these out like this and they lock in place. You can also push them back and they just kind of snap into place over here. And then it does kind of have this like 4-prong to pull out the switches. Once it does get pressed in, you can just press this button back here in the rear to release that. And then similar type of experience with the case. It does have a harder shell. It is zip up. This is where you store the keyboard itself, and it does have some Velcro straps down there to hold it in place. And then looking up here at the top. All right, so here's a quick look of the Neo65, and as you can see, it's a standard type of a 65% layout. The delete key up here at the top, this does have transparent keycaps. We'll jump into that here in a little bit. This is also available in different colorways as well, and a full aluminum case. So everything about this truly does feel heavy duty. The USB-C connectivity for this is up here on the top in the middle. Here's a look of what the rear looks like over here. I did take these screws out. I was not able to remove this piece. I'm not sure if I needed to pry a little bit more or anything like that, but it does have this cool looking bottom plate down here, and everything on this is pretty standard. The front of this is pretty low. It does kind of have these edges on here, but I don't feel like they're too sharp. They do have a little bit of an edge feeling to them, but all around really liking just the look and just the general feeling of this. One thing I do want to talk about with you here, I'll break this down, the internal design on this here in just a little bit, but just the feeling of this is so soft. As you can see, when you are using this, you do get some stability when you're gaming and everything, but when you're typing, as you can see, it does have some additional movement there with the gasket mount, and just truly everything about the feeling of this as you're using it, typing on it, does feel very premium. And here is a look of the Hex80. This also does have transparent keycaps. We'll go more into detail on that here in a little bit. A little bit of a different font on here. This one does have some additional buttons over here on the right-hand side. It does have an RGB and a light bar switch right here. And then over here, it also does have a profile switch, obviously, so you can switch between profiles. But the similar type of just overall feeling with the heaviness of this. This also does have some plushness to it, but a lot of weight here. This one is actually broken down a little bit differently. It does have the bottom tray, which is all aluminum, and then this also has a top piece as well. The USB-C connectivity for this one is down here in the bottom left-hand side. Here's a look of the rear of this, a little bit different. Rubberized feet up in each one of the corners, a little bit bigger rubber feet. It also does have this shiny silver piece and these little orange accents over here, which I really think is cool. But then the front of this also does sit pretty low. Does have edges on here that are smoothed out for the most part. Here's just what a general overall look of this keyboard all the way around looks like. All right, so now we'll show you what we're talking about with the heavy weight on both of these. For the Neo65, dropping this on the scale, looks like we're about 1,497 grams. Real solid feeling to that one right there. Next up on the Hex80, put this one on the scale. not that far apart, but 1,702 grams. Here's a look at the keycaps for both of these keyboards. We'll start out with the keycaps for the Neo65. These are both using transparent keycaps. I'm not sure if they're the exact same on both boards. However, these do have a good feeling to them. I'm not sure whether it's some type of a coating or texture that is up here on the surface, but it does feel nice and grippy compared to some other transparent keycaps I've used in the past that have a slippery feeling to them. So these have felt nice to both game and type on. For these switches, starting out with the Hex80, this is using the OW Lab TI HE magnetic switches. These do have an initial actuation of around 40 GF and a bottom out around 50 GF. They have a total travel distance of 3.4 millimeters. And coming over here to the Nova65, this is using the brand new OW Lab Nova switch. And though I don't have any specifications on these switches, going back and forth and testing them to the ones that do come included in the Hex80, these do feel a little bit lighter than that. But I will just say the overall feeling of these switches, they do have a really smooth actuation to them and also a really fast rebound. Starting out over here on the Neo65, I did install both these switches next to each other to kind of show you an example comparing both of them to one another. I would say that these TI HE switches, they do feel just a little bit better to type on, but when it does come to the gaming experience, one thing that I did notice is that these do have a little bit more of a stem wobble there. When you come over here and compare it to the Nova switches, I did kind of prefer gaming on these due to the fact they just feel a little bit more snappy to me, and I feel like these have just a little bit less of stem wobble. So as you're using them, you do get just a little bit of a greater sense of stability. But either way, I do really feel like both of them have a really solid feeling to them just all around, and they've been a joy to use. Coming down here for the stabilizers included inside this board, they do have a nice amount of lube in there, and they have felt really nice. Also, this keyboard does include these silicone pads right here underneath the space bar. So the one thing about these boards, they do have a very premium build. Now, everybody's always going to have their own opinions on what type of internals they prefer for their keyboards. Both these do have a carbon fiber switch plate, which I really like a lot. But in between the carbon fiber switch plate, there is some foam. And here's a look down here at the bottom, a close-up shot of what the PCB looks like. And as I mentioned, both of these keyboards are gasket mounted. On the 65, here's where these little rubber pieces are, and here's the slots that they go inside. In the case, it does have this little ribbon cable attached to the bottom of the PCB, so do be careful as you are taking this out so that you do not break this. But then underneath the PCB itself, there are 2 additional layers of foam sitting inside of this all aluminum case. And then next up, we have a look over here at the Hex80. So in order to open this one up, there's actually these screws that are placed diagonally up here in the top portion of the keyboard, and then also down in the bottom portion. So once you do remove the keycaps, you can just remove the top layer and the bottom layer here to get them with a screwdriver to unscrew them. Once you do take those 6 screws out, 3 at the top, 3 at the bottom, then this top aluminum piece just comes off. It is also attached by this ribbon cable, so do be careful for the buttons that are over here on the right hand side, but this piece does feel just absolutely solid. Also, this one is gasket mounted. Everything is pretty similar with the type of a build. The stabilizers that do come on this one, they do have a nice amount of pre-lube to them. You also do have these additional silicone little stopping gaskets down here, right underneath the space bar. Also show you a quick close-up. Both these do have a bottom or south facing LED on them, so that is what that looks like. Taking a look at the top, again, this one is also gasket mounted. This does have these big, wider pieces that do stick out from the PCB, and they do have these little silicone pieces on here. They do feel really soft, actually. So in between the switch plate, you do have an additional piece of foam in there. Here is what the bottom of the PCB looks like over here on the Hex80, and then right below that, it does have 2 additional pieces of foam, again sitting in an all aluminum bottom piece down here. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and drop a sound test between both of them. We'll go ahead and start out with the Hex80. To access the web driver, you're actually going to do this through ATK's website. just simply come up here to connect the keyboard itself. Once you do that, it should load up all the settings and bring us in here. Starting off on the left-hand side, you have your remap function where you can remap any of your keys, function keys, stuff like that. This next tab on the lighting settings, I've already gone over all this before, but you have a bunch of different presets right here. You can select all these keys, edit individual ones if you want to do some type of a custom loadout. You also have a sleep time down here and a brightness setting as well. Here is where you can control the logo RGB, which is going to be the RGB that's over here on the right hand side of the keyboard. Next up, for the performance setting, there is these presets in here. You can come and select. It'll give you an audible cue, and I'm not going to select them right now because I don't want to change too much of how I have this keyboard currently set up. If you want to do it manually, you can come over here to the travel selection to make your adjustments. But before we do that, let's come over here and talk about the performance. If you enable this extreme mode, you can get an even lower actuation distance in the setting right here. And then they also do have this anti-false trigger mode and AI match. I've been using these and testing them out. This keyboard has been running pretty stable for the most part. When I first got it, I had some issues, but I did do a firmware update on it. I do notice if the sensitivity is a little too low, I do get accidental actuations and stuff like that, but I've just been kind of calibrating it to my own settings and using it how I like to with my settings. I'll show you here in just a second. As far as the calibration goes, I always recommend calibrating the keyboard out of the box, and even after a firmware update, this keyboard only has a manual calibration option. However, and then over here is where you can select these switches. I do have the OW Lab TIs in here, as I did mention earlier. I do kind of hope that they add some more additional options to this later on. Since this gray and orange aesthetic, I feel like the Gateron Sparks would also look pretty cool in here. I'd like to throw those in here to try them out. Hopefully they'll add some support for that later on. Back over here to the trigger point, let's go ahead and select this one right here. So I could show you how you can adjust the actuation. This does go as low as 0.050 millimeters, and you can make adjustments with that extreme mode selected to 0.001 millimeters. So they have a very wide range on how you can make adjustments to the overall key actuation themselves. I kind of wish that was a little easier to drag this around, but put it back to 1 millimeter where I did currently have it. Then over here, you can turn on or off the rapid trigger. And same with the rapid trigger settings, you can go as low as a 0.005 millimeter, make adjustments in 0.001 millimeters if you do have that selected. Again, I've been kind of having some issues where I get some accidental hits on my keys, especially if I'm just resting my hand on the keyboard. So honestly, these settings have been working out great for me, and I do feel like they're low enough. Try to get a responsive setting. And then over here, you do have your dead zone options as well. And I forgot to mention, you can select just WASD, select all, come in here and individually select keys. So pretty standardized types of things. Next up, you have all your advanced functions. For example, SOCD, I've had this set up on the A and D key. I'll go ahead and show you how I get this set up really quickly, but this has been working out pretty well for me. Select a key, hit that. You'll want to hit key 2, come over here to D. I've been using this last input priority, and then you can adjust the trigger point and make that as sensitive as you like if you want to activate it as fastly as or as quickly as possible. Next up, you do have a macro settings recorder. And then lastly, on the other settings tab, this is where you can actually take a look at the other colorways that this keyboard does come in. And then you also can do things like restore factory settings and make sure that the firmware is always going to be up to date on these. One thing, just to let you guys know, if you have any issues with this keyboard or any keyboard for that matter, have to do a firmware update or anything like that, using a restore factory settings can usually iron out or fix any types of issues that you're having, as far as any types of issues you could be having with the firmware goes anyways. So let's go check out the 65. For the Neo65, you will actually head over to this QwertyKeys web browser, so different than the ATK. Go ahead and select that to jump here into these settings. They are using a custom web driver for this, and as you can see, I just plugged this keyboard in, and I am getting a little bit of a spike here. This is kind of something that's been happening to me on this keyboard if I just unplug it or plug it back in. So what you want to do first thing, especially if you're going to see something like this to prevent any accidental actuations, is come over to the switch calibration. Now, the one cool thing about this keyboard is that they are actually, they have an auto calibration here. So this honestly has been working pretty good. There's been a few times I've had to come in and do this a couple times, but like I said, it's been definitely happening to where every time I unplug my keyboard or plug it back in, I found myself having to come and do this. Hit the save calibration once that is done, and then once we come over to the actuation, you can see we're not getting those accidental presses anymore. So since we're already here on the performance tab, we will go ahead and talk about this. Kind of the same thing here, where you can select all keys, come in here and hit an individual key. So since we're on the performance tab, we'll go ahead and talk about this right here. I'll go ahead and select this key over here, the arrow key on the right. Currently I have this set to a 1mm. Now here's the dead zone settings down here. So as you can see, I currently have the dead zone on these keys set to a 0.2mm. So it will allow me to only go as low as a 0.2mm. If I wanted to go as low as possible, it does go to 0.000. I don't like setting it at this setting, but as you can see, the lowest reading here, it will allow you to go to a 0.010mm. And then it does allow you to make adjustments in a 0.010mm increment. I'll go ahead and set this right back up here where I had it for this key for now, but that was just to give you an idea. All right, so next up, we will come look at the rapid trigger settings, and kind of the same thing here, where you can make adjustments as low as 0.010mm. Again, kind of the same thing with this keyboard. Since I've gotten it out of the box, it's been a little sensitive. If I have this, the sensitivity is too low, or sometimes I'll accidentally press keys and stuff like that. So I've just been kind of leaving it around here. Again, this has been working out more than well enough for me as far as sensitivity, and been very fast. Honestly, couldn't really tell the difference. I'm just trying to make sure this is running as smoothly as possible. But you can also disable continuous rapid trigger. When you're using such low settings, you don't need to use continuous rapid trigger. And then the same types of things over here for the release as well. You can go as high as 2.2mm over here for these settings. So next up for the switches, this is where you can select the switches that you currently do have installed inside this keyboard. As I already showed you, this is the switch calibration. Next up on the RGB effects, I have static selected. You do have a couple of different presets here. If you were to select any one of these on the dynamic or the reactive settings, you can also adjust the speed in which the settings change and the brightness setting as well, or you can turn that off. For the advanced keys, some pretty impressive stuff here as well. Again, just as I demonstrated you guys earlier, setting up the SOCD. As you can see, this has a bunch of different functions here. Pretty impressive for their own developed software. Let's go ahead and take a look at the SOCD here really quickly. You can just simply come and set these up like that. Have the last input priority. You can also do a test, but once you got that all set up, just come over here, hit confirm, and that'll save that for you. Lastly, you have your remap functions. Here's all the types of keys that you can modify on your keyboard, and you can even adjust different layers like your function settings, for example. And then last but not least, over here on the settings tab, this is where it will allow you to update your firmware, and you have these additional settings here as well. All right, guys, so that about wraps things up for the Hex80 and the Neo65 Sonic HE Plus. And truly, these keyboards have been a breath of fresh air. They have a very premium build to them. Just everything about the feeling of them is very impressive. With the Hex80, they really went all out with this version, trying to give it just the best performance out that they can. 32K scanning rate, the cloud with ATK. This is without question the best keyboard that I've ever got my hands on from ATK. And as far as the 65 goes, breaking down the price difference between both of these, this one's going to come in, the Hex80, around $200. The Neo65, a mind-blowing $115. When I got this keyboard and I was just using it, I actually got the 65 right before I got the Hex80, and just right off the bat, I didn't know anything about the pricing on the 65. Truly, I thought if you would have asked me, I would honestly said between $200 and $300 is what I thought this was going to come out as. The fact that this is coming in at only $115, the list on it is $125 on the website. I'm not sure if it's just some type of like pre-order deal they had going on with it or anything like that, but the fact that this comes with a carrying case, carbon fiber switch plate, gasket mount system, very premium style feeling weight, heavy aluminum case to it. I really think that price for this is just absolutely insane. I would have never seen it costing that much money. So with that being said, are these keyboards the best Hall effect gaming keyboard out there on the market? I would say that absolutely, without question, they're in the conversation. I know that everybody has their different preferences as far as different styles of switches go, different types of keycaps, and stuff like that. But just the feeling performance of these has really been fantastic. As I did mention earlier, I did kind of notice some things just with the firmware on these. Does need a little bit tweaking. I was having a little bit issues here there where I had to restart my computer, reconnect them. But once I got the firmware updated, everything has been running pretty solid for the most part. I still feel like there's a couple of kinks and bugs out there that they can work out. But aside from that, really, truly impressed on these. Some of my favorite keyboards out there, no question. And I'm really impressed with what they've been able to come up with so far. Really excited to see any other types of additions they're going to come out with in the future. So if you guys do have any additional questions or feel like I left anything out, please let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed watching this video and are interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please drop this video a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.